Welcome to Sleepless in St. Canard, where nostalgia replaces REM cycles. I'm Kitty.
And I'm Anj.
And we haven't slept
in 30 years.
This is a podcast about the 90s Disney cartoon Darkwing Duck, set on the planet Flug, where the greatest champion of all time gets to train flunkies for free. AKA Everything Hurts and I'm Dying, as we're forced to talk to you about fan favorite darling of the podcast, Comet Guy.
Ha ha!
Does anybody actually like him? It's what I want to know. I mean,
if there's anybody out there who likes Comet Guy, we'd love to hear from you.
And then we'd also like you to register on this website that alerts people that the Comet Guy fan lives in the neighborhood. But all dramatics aside, he's really not that bad. I mean, on the grand scale thing, he's just weird. Just a weird character that could have been just a throwaway one-episode character. Somebody on the writing staff was like, no, you know what? We're going to give him a second episode. And you mean, like, he's fine. He's not horribly offensive to things other than our delicate sensibilities. And the episode itself isn't horrible. It's just kind of boring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's... For as much as we dunk on him, he doesn't infuriate me as much as Lilliput. And I don't think his episode is as bad as, like the Jambalaya Jake ones. Or some of the other ones, like, the horribly racist ones, obviously. But the Apes of Wrath, or whatever that one's called. Like, the ones that I'm just like, I don't ever need to watch this one again. Not that I'm clamoring to watch this episode again. I did have to watch it twice for this podcast, so my sacrifice for all of you listeners. But, I don't know. Early thoughts on Comet Guy. We do have some announcents that we can break up the musings on Comet Guy and why he is full stop. But, Anj, I'll leave it to you before we get too deep into the planet Flug.
So we've got some comic updates. The biggest one, so the Darkwing Duck Dynamite Comics is coming to an end at issue 10. But that's because it is continuing onwards as a new series, and it is a Justice Ducks comic series, which is
interesting.
I did not really expect. I did not see that coming. I don't know. It just surprised me. It's a different writer. I don't have the name off the top of my head. I want to say it's Roger Langridge. Different writer. I want to say the same artist.
Okay.
Doing the Negaduck comics seem to be like their own thing. They have a different writer and a different artist. This Justice Ducks will have the same artist as the Darkwing Duck, but it's going to have a different writer. Yeah. So that's interesting. And as of right now, Darkwing Duck number 9 has come out. It's been out for a couple weeks now as of us recording this, but I'm just super behind on post-editing. So as you are listening to this, we haven't even dropped Negaduck number 1, our episode summary of that, even though we've recorded it. So it's going to be a little while before we get there, but issue 9 is out, and then all that's left is issue 10. And I assume that it's going to...
Revenge of the Lorax.
Oh, God. Revenge of the Lorax. It's going to head into... So it's going to be interesting. Personally, I've never cared much for Stegmutt or Neptunia. I don't think they're very interesting or strong characters. So when I heard of the Justice Ducks as a series, I don't know. I'm fine with more Darkwing, obviously. But it's like, of these characters, they're not characters I would ever focus on or want to devote energy to. Personally, I would rather it be, even if they replace them with 2 other characters, I don't know who. Maybe the writer will actually make them interesting, because I feel like Stegmutt, in particular, he only appeared in, I think, Justice Ducks, Darkwing Doubloon, and then his episode, which was Jurassic Jumble. Mm-hmm. And I don't like him. I just find he's kind of like Comet Guy to me. I just find him to be a very annoying character, but maybe they'll do something with him to make him more interesting. And Neptunia, I'm just kind of lukewarm about. I just don't find her to be particularly interesting either. So
I think what Stegmutt probably has going for him is that he regularly interacts with Gosalyn.
Yes. Although
I don't know if that's going to carry over into the comics As discussed, we haven't talked about that. But hopefully Goslin is involved in the Justice Ducks comics. Because that would be a damn shame.
I think so, because I want to say I read the description for the first issue, which I think comes out in December or January, and I'm pretty sure they mentioned Goslin as being part of it, or the Quivering Quack, possibly.
Good.
So I think we're going to see a lot of that, but I have no idea to what extent, if it's not going to be centering around Darkwing, if they're going to focus on each of the characters individually, which, if that meant more Morgana, that would be nice. And Gizmo Duck, too.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on a Justice Ducks comic series?
Oh, it's fine. I like Gizmo Duck. I'm good for more Gizmo Duck art. If the writer is good at the dynamic, I feel like it could be very fun. I feel like it's kind of, unless like the Fearsome Five is they're a bad guy, I can't really see anybody being super interesting villain-wise for a whole superhero team-up thing. I don't know. I will gladly sit here and let you read it to me.
Yeah, and I mean, I can't really look a gift horse in the mouth, because we're going from next to no Darkwing content, and then after, the Boom and the Joe comics were canceled, there was kind of the dry spell, and then we had the DuckTales reboot. So the fact that we're getting anything Darkwing at this point, I think is still, I feel grateful for that. It's just like, it just surprised me. I was like, really? The Justice Ducks? Because like the Fearsome Five feel like the kind of villainous team that they can keep coming back and you can keep telling more stories, and each character on an individual level is interesting. But with the Justice Ducks, it never felt like they were actually a serious team. It just seemed like for that one episode, they kind of worked for a little bit. They're not the kind of characters I would have brought back for a serious team up.
The Fearsome Five were also in a bunch of episodes together. We only got the 2 episodes with the Justice Ducks, and really, if you want to be kind of technical about it, like maybe just 1 episode with the Justice Ducks. Because most of that first episode is spent bickering with each other, and they're not like a superhero team. They're probably just a superhero team for like the last 10 minutes, and then they immediately implode afterward.
Exactly. So it really depends on the writer, because if the writer can make characters like Stegmutt endearing and interesting, good on him, and I would be fine with that. In fact, that would be an interesting challenge. Make me like Stegmutt.
Make me like Stegmutt challenge. Do you think it will be easier to stomach him because you don't have to hear his voice?
Somewhat, yes.
You heard it here first, everyone. And just challenging the universe. Someone has to make her like Stegmutt. It could be these people. Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. Oh, and then Negaduck number 2 is coming out very soon as of us recording it. I think it's coming out next week. So we'll have that to look forward to. So we've got a lot of comics coming down the line for us to discuss in between episodes. So we've got lots to do, and I will be pushing out a bunch of episodes soon because I have more free time now. So I'm going to post edit and catch up on what we've fallen behind on, so that eventually maybe we'll actually catch up to around the time when the comics are released.
I'm going to be pushing out Negaduck's number 2.
Those golden eggs!
There's too many poop jokes laying there. Anyway, yes, Negaduck's golden eggs will be on full display soon, and we will discuss them. And I guess eventually the Justice Ducks comic. I guess that's pretty neat, though. Like, Justice Ducks, as we said, were just kind of like a throwaway thing. So hey, let's give them some spotlight. I wonder if Amanda Deibert's whole little thing was kind of pigeonholed toward doing this. It was just kind of like, well, you have to get the Justice Ducks in there because we're going to do a Justice Ducks spin-off. And she's like, alright, get ready for the Lorax.
I'm excited. I want to know what's going on with the Lorax. I am looking forward to that.
Yes, let's sit in that excitement for a moment before we move on to Comet Guy. What if they make Comet Guy a new part of the Justice Ducks instead of, like Neptunia or Stegmutt?
That would be even worse. I think the problem is, if I were to replace them, I would want to replace Neptunia with at least another female character, so it's a little more balanced and it isn't just like Morgana as the only woman on the team. But the problem is that there was kind of a shortage of female characters when you think about it. I think Dr. Cerebellum would be kind of funny. I don't think she's really a team player, and she's kind of chaotic, but I think she would be funny to be involved in some way as like a...
Yeah, I could dig it, the mad inventor.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't there like a superhero girl in one of the episodes too? Was it Heavy Mental? Or no, maybe those were the bad guys.
Those were the bad guys. You're thinking of Hot Shot and Fly Girl, probably.
That's the one. I am.
Not a whole lot to pick from unless they make some new characters, I guess. But also the Justice Ducks haven't pigeonholed themselves into a number. See, Negaduck kind of messed himself over there because he's got the Fearsome Five, and it's like if he wants to add or subtract members, then he's got to rebrand a little bit. But at least with the Justice Ducks, they could add as many members as they want, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't say anywhere in the name.
I like the Avengers like that. To
yeah,
have a rotating roster.
Exactly.
They're just going to go to the planet Mertz and bring back all the superhero characters, and that's going to be 90% of the Justice Ducks is all just different comic guys.
And they're not even ducks.
They're not even ducks. So it's on theme. We're not ducks, so I used to be. But anyway, is that it for Happy Time updates, or are we going to start talking about Comic Guy now?
Yes, put it off as long as we could, and now it's time.
It's time. It's time to pull off this big ol' human Band-Aid. I'm just gonna kind of preface this by saying I don't know that I would ever have the strength to do like a usual in-depth blow-by-blow that I do for a lot of these episodes. So this one is my disclaimer. I have done the best that I can and the most that I am willing to do for Comic Guy. So the basic, if you would like to watch this episode, it's season 1, episode 25 on Disney Plus, and the blurb is Comet Guy arrives on Earth to be trained by Darkwing Duck.
Was he though? Was he?
He arrives on Earth to be trained. I guess he did.
When we get to the end of the episode, I need to tell you a serious Mandela effect I had about this episode that just blew me away. But okay. I guess we'll wait till the end. Go ahead. Proceed.
All right. So our setup for this episode is basically, if you just want to hear this one little blurb and then skip to the end, you can. Steelbeak is stealing rubber. Darkwing is Darkwinging. Comet Guy has come to Earth. Ridiculous. Whatever. We'll get there. Has come to train with the greatest hero on the planet. And then you can skip to the end. But anyway, Steelbeak starts off robbing a rubber chicken factory with his
chickens? Rubber duckies.
Oh, yes. I did write chicken, but it is in fact rubber duckies. Look at all those ducks. 1,000 apologies. You could tell I was really not interested in watching this episode. So he's robbing a rubber ducky factory with his Eggmen, and Darkwing crashes in. Also worth noting, we do not get a single I am the terror that flaps in the night in this episode. That's how you know it's a clunker. And they're just kind of, standing there, yelling at each other. Darkwing's like, oh, I'm gonna get you. And Steelbeak is like, oh, look at what the cat dragged in. That's basically it. And then a little metal object crashes to Earth between them and Comet Guy. So Comet Guy's helmet is kind of like, like a little cake plate thing. Where you have the little plate, and then you have like the cloche? I don't know how you say it. That sits on top, the little glass dome. So it's like that classic flying saucer looking thing. And somehow it opens up and this giant muscly man comes out of it. But so we never really know. I'm sure it's supposed to be astoundingly funny, but it's just kind of strap in. Yeah, so he crawls out of his own little helmet thing and starts talking to the rubber duckies. Looking for their champion. And Darkwing's like, shut up, weirdo, we're fighting crime. And Comet Guy's like, oh, I fight crime too. And he starts to show them his powers and throws a comet, and it just incinerates the whole building. And Launchpad is like, oh, look, there's a fire alarm. Good thing there's a fire alarm. And then pulls it, even though the building is just basically matchsticks at this point. And then the bells start, like the alarm bells start, and Comet Guy's only weakness, we learn, this is all like in the first 5 seconds of this episode. We learn that his weakness is bells, and he starts dancing when he hears them, but he's just like in a full suit and tie doing like a whole like dance routine thing. Steelbeak was okay with all of this until he realized that he's soiled, aka he's got schmutz on his beautiful white jacket, and tries to get away. But Darkwing tries to grab him, and then there's this whole big nonsense with the dancing, and I don't know, Comet Guy's just dancing around, and he knocks this cop lady over, and then the cop lady blows her whistle, and that's how
bitch slaps her.
I'm a hero. No wonder why he needs free education. So basically we learn that how to undo the bell thing is to whistle. In all this exposition, Steelbeak gets away, and Darkwing is pissed. And he's like, what kind of hero are you? And Comet Guy's like, I'm a lousy one. And starts crying.
Can we talk about the fact that Darkwing walks up his body? He's so short that he can't meet Comet Guy face to face, so he just walks towards Comet Guy and then just starts walking horizontally up his body until he's face to face. And I don't know why, but that was like the funniest part of the episode for me.
He's bouldering Comet Guy, groveling up the mountain of the man to yell at him. But Comet Guy was apparently sent away from his home planet because he's too useless and had to come to train with the greatest hero, renowned through the galaxy, who Darkwing, of course, assumes is himself.
Oopsie. I guess I should have warned you. When I hear a bell, I can't stop dancing until I hear a whistle.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, boys, I think we've had our comedy relief for today.
Now listen, bub. You've just enabled an envoy of evil to escape with a passel of potentially perilous rubber duckies. What kind of crime fighter are you, anyway?
A lousy one. I'm the worst champion the planet Mertz has ever had. That's why they sent me here. I'm supposed to study with this planet's champion. A crime fighter renowned throughout the galaxy.
Yeah, well, seek no further peculiar-looking thing from another world, for I am he.
To train him, Darkwing takes him to a never-again-mentioned a secret shush training facility that apparently he has access to. I don't think maybe people know that he has access to it. I would like to imagine that he just kind of, like, followed somebody and just assumes that he's allowed to use it. But it's, like, in the middle of nowhere, so, obviously he can't do any damage. Except to Darkwing, which is, par for the course. So he just kind of, like the whole, like, pulling a cactus, and he's like, oh, wrong cactus, and he's got, cactus needles all in his hands and stuff. Where we get to see basically all of Comet Guy's powers, and he oopsies his way through all of them. He's got, like, ice vision and super strength, and just keeps kind of freezing Darkwing and crushing him, and he's ready to give up, but Launchpad gives him a never give up pep talk, and he's like, right, DW, you can never give up, and Darkwing, who's crushed under, some structure that Comet Guy crushed him with, was like, oh, yeah, you never give up, even though you really, really want to sometimes. And then they go on patrol, and they're just kind of flying around in the Thunderquack, and Comet Guy says that on Mertz, which is his home planet, the bad guys just go around looking for trouble. Well, anyway, Steelbeak is stealing all the rubber bands and erasers from another building. Well, I don't know how they pay their bills. And Darkwing tells Comet Guy to do exactly as he does when they're going in there. And of course, this is played out to hilarious effect, where Comet Guy is literally doing everything that Darkwing is doing, down to his little poses. And inevitably, Comet Guy doofuses his way into hurting Darkwing, and Darkwing flips out on him, and fails him out of his tutelage. He just kind of loses his shit, as he likes to do, and screams at him, and storms away. And then little Comet Guy is sitting there sobbing. Steelbeak, during the whole tussle, was kind of shoved into a janitorial closet. So he comes out with a bucket on his head and a cape and pretends to be a hero called Steelwing Cluck. He's like, well, I'll train you. Come with me. And of course he uses Comet Guy to continue his crime spree. The next place they go just has like this giant vat of rubber. I don't even know if it's rubber cement, but it's just like a molten vat of rubber. And he has Comet Guy about to steal it because he's like, oh no, it is a bomb. I must take it back to my hideout to defuse it.
And it's a giant teapot, which is like the second time that we've had a giant teapot appear in this show.
Yes. Yeah, it is very reminiscent of that other one, too. That was a bushroot one, wasn't it?
Yes.
The teapot? Yeah. He's about, he's telling Comet Guy that he needs to, quote-unquote, save the day by defusing this thing that he wants him actually to steal. When Darkwing and Launchpad crash in, but then just, like, kind of roll down whatever they crashed into and land at their feet, it's like, I don't feel like anybody gets to look very cool in this episode. They're all just kind of bumbling idiots. It was like the blind leading the blind, or the blind trading the blind in this. And Darkwing tries to call out Steelwing Cluck as Steelbeak, but Steelbeak has a pretty funny plan. I have to say, it's a pretty good plan.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, oh, that's not Darkwing. It's the bad guy has all these android duplicates. And then he just has all the Eggmen put on, like, Darkwing hats and capes and stand around Darkwing. And Darkwing's like, are you stupid? Everybody cannot tell anybody apart. Like, Launchpad thinks that they're all android duplicates, like, can't pick his friend out. Comet Guy is completely duped. Steelbeak was his audience, and he knows just exactly the IQ level that he's trying to beat here. So basically he confuses everyone, and then Comet Guy starts beating up the real Darkwing, because, that's how it goes. And, like, that helps Steelbeak make off with all the rubber. Oh, Comet Guy leaves with them, right? Like,
yes.
He helps them fly away with the giant vat of rubber. Launchpad is left behind, and is also confused by that very sneaky plan, but eventually does realize that Darkwing is Darkwing, and Darkwing flips out on him, as is his way, and then they follow the trail of molten rubber to Steelbeak's hideout of the week, where they're melting all the rubber in a giant teapot. Darkwing reveals that Steelwing Cluck is Steelbeak to Comet Guy, and Comet Guy is just astounded that he was stupid. Steelbeak uses a little bell to keep from getting clobbered, and of course Comet Guy goes through an entire series, like a really long series of little dancing persona things. And it's like, Steelbeak will ring the bell, Darkwing will whistle, and then he'll ring the bell, and then Darkwing will whistle. It's like the ballet dancer is by far, I think, the most disturbing one. He's like such a tight little leotard, and he's got like a 24-pack. Like, he's got way too many abs. So yeah, the whole thing, there's a whole Carmen Miranda thing. He's like a flamenco dancer. He's a can dancer. It just never stops. At some point, Steelbeak gets fed up with Darkwing whistling and launches lemons at him and Launchpad so that their beak lips shrivel up so they can't whistle. And Comet Guy just tap dances around for a while. Hey. Prowl High Command has actually been in this episode a few times already, but they really just love to be on the air in this one. And they get to tell the captive Darkwing and Launchpad the plan that basically they're melting all the rubber in St. Canard into a giant ball, which they call the foul ball. And it's just a giant rubber ball that they're going to use to destroy whatever they want, like the whole city.
It's so absurd. I love it.
And so Steelbeak goes off to play with the ball, and Darkwing and Launchpad are all tied up and left with some dopey Eggmen and the dancing Comet Guy. So Darkwing tricks the Eggmen into making, like, he's like, oh, it sure would be whatever you do, don't pour all that hot rubber on us with that teapot. And they're like, well, let's pour the tea on them. And he starts heating it up, but of course that makes the teapot whistle. And Comet Guy snaps out of his little dancing routine and clobbers the Eggman, releasing Darkwing and Launchpad, and then they fly off. They catch up to Steelbeak immediately. Darkwing coaches Comet Guy through defeating the Foul Ball with all his superpowers. And things are looking up until the clock tower starts going off and Comet Guy turns into an MC Hammer-looking dude and just kind of demolition dances his way to victory. And very quickly, Darkwing and Launchpad just kind of shrug and join in. So we get conflict revolution of this episode is just Darkwing and Launchpad awkwardly dancing and, Comet Guy hammer dancing his way to victory. They dance the Eggman into submission and Steelbeak just kind of taps out of the fight with a whistle. But he does get a few Three Stooges out through a whole bunch of it, too. So the bad guys are now beaten, and Darkwing has Comet Guy up at the tower, and is presenting him with a doctorate in championology, or whatever the hell, from Earth. And then we, of course, find out that Comet Guy was meant to train on the planet Flug, and not Earth. He actually lets out, like, a very concerned little...
And so, in recognition of your boundless fortitude and dexterity in saving St. Canard from devastation, I, Darkwing Duck, am pleased to confer upon you the highly coveted degree of Doctor of Championology.
I'm so proud! A diploma from the famous champion of the planet Flug!
Flug? This isn't the planet Flug.
It isn't? Ho! I knew I should have taken that left turn at Andromeda. Well, Professor Darkwing, not that I don't appreciate it.
But I've got to get to Flug in a hurry. Bye, guys. Oopsie. Ho ho!
Which is pretty, like, the only funny thing. And he just packs himself back up into his helmet and flies off into the night, leaving Darkwing and Launchpad to ha-ha in his wake. And that's it.
I think that's a record for how quickly you've ever summarized an episode.
It is like 15 minutes, right? You talked more about the comic books. That would help this episode.
Okay, I have to tell you about the Mandela effect, because I completely, for some reason, remembered the ending of this episode differently.
Okay.
Which is unusual, because when it comes to Darkwing Duck and episodes in general, I have a pretty good memory, because I've watched them obsessively. I don't know what happened. My mind overwrote this a little bit. I was absolutely convinced that at the end of this episode, when he talks about the mix-up with the champion, for some reason, I remembered it as Darkwing says like his name, like thanks to Darkwing Duck. And then Comet Guy says, Darkwing Duck, I thought you were Gizmo Duck. And it's revealed that the champion of the planet is Gizmo Duck, and he was going to train with Gizmo Duck. And Darkwing pitches a fit because he was never the champion in the first place. I don't know where I got this from. That's how I remembered it ending.
Well, that's kind of how it was stacking up. Like, honestly, I was thinking it could go that direction too. I did not remember a lot of this episode, probably as a self-preservation tactic. But I was like, this better be, like, I obviously knew that it wasn't actually Darkwing that he was supposed to be training with. And I was like, well, it's probably, Gizmo Duck would be the perfect punch at the end. I was like, oh, either that or it's just somebody completely different. But it turns out he was just completely on the wrong planet, which is fine. Because I don't really know that Gizmo Duck should be considered the greatest champion in the universe either. As much as I love Gizmo Duck, I don't think he really fits that bill.
I don't know where I got that from.
I could see that. Yeah. It's also like, this whole episode was basically just like, but what if Superman was dumb?
Very much so.
It's like the whole thing. Superman, but dumb.
How would you rate it?
So, there's no Goslin. There's no
that's
Honker.
true.
There's no Muddlefoots. It is purely like Darkwing and Launchpad and Comet Guy and the Steelbeak show. Steelbeak, I feel like, was pretty good in this episode. He was the best opportunistic Steelbeak that he could be. His whole little disguise thing was fun. So, I don't know. I want to say, and the animation wasn't bad, even though you had to look at Comet Guy a lot. Like, they put a lot of work into his dancing. So I can't give it like a negative score, but I would say probably like a 1.5 out of 5.
Wow.
What about you?
Surprisingly, I'll give it a slightly higher number, but then I'll add in a Comet Guy factor after. So on its own as an episode, I'd give it like a 3 out of 5. The animation isn't super great. Like they're off model and there's a lot of stuff that's kind of funky within the episode.
Yeah.
But I think Steelbeak really carried the episode. Like, he was pretty funny, and I do like that Steelbeak as a character is pretty clever, and he does think ahead. Like, the fact that he had the whole plan with the Darkwing decoys, and it actually worked. Everybody, like, even Launchpad, you live with this man, and he's literally just like, they all look the same. I don't know which one is you. And it's like, oh my God. So that was funny, and I thought Steelwing Cluck was pretty funny. I thought the concept with the rubber ball was pretty funny because that's the kind of stuff I when I watch Darkwing Duck, that's the type of plot I expect from the evildoers. It's just stupid stuff, melting down all the rubber to create a giant rubber ball so that it can bounce menacingly through the city and crush everybody to death. So
I don't know how you make profit off of that, but they must have a way.
So that alone, like, I give it a 3 out of 5 for that. But and also Darkwing Duck was like, he was being pretty sarcastic, and I like that. Like, I remember, I think it was the part where he mentions the bell, and he says, the whistle changes me back, and Darkwing's just like, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. He calls him like, he's very rude to him. There was some great stuff, but I didn't have the energy to write it down, but he like called him like a freakishly disturbing creature or something like that. Comet Guy is just like a regular human dude. I don't know that we've said that. I mean, he's like a big jack, like Arnold Schwarzenegger looking dude, like very 90s Schwarzenegger. But yeah, so it's just, I feel like they did that in the Twitching Channels. Is that the one where
yes, with the hideous beakless mutants.
Yes, so like they dunk on humans a lot, which I appreciate. But anyway, you were going to do your Comet Guy factor.
Yes. So Comet Guy brings it down to like a 1 out of 5 just by existing and, being there for me to look at and permeating my eyeballs and my ears with his laugh. And it was just like every single time he says oopsie, I wanted to drink. I was like,
a lot of oopsies.
Oopsie.
And then he had the audacity to have another episode.
And you know what? There is some overlap between Stegmutt and Comet Guy in the fact that they both are very strong and they constantly screw up and cause eternal amounts of pain for Darkwing, and then they're both oopsie. Like, they both do it. Like, I remember Stegmutt doing the oopsie too, and maybe that's part of why I don't like them. Maybe there's something in that trope that just triggers some sort of deep emotional hatred, but I don't know what it is. I just don't like it.
A strong baby complex.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I don't like those kinds of characters. They annoy me. Characters that are, I guess, overtly really unintelligent, but are also adults. But it's like strong. Is that a thing? Is that a trope? Strong baby?
I just said it, so I feel like it has to be. But I don't know if that's what it's called. There probably is a fancier name for it, but that's how I identify it. So, there we go. Comet Guy. We did it. And we don't have any other Comet Guy episodes on the wheel, so we are spared for now. But there is always Planet of the Capes to come back and haunt us. And then that one, isn't that one just Darkwing and Comet Guy? Like, there's not even Launchpad in that one.
Yeah, because Darkwing gets dragged to the planet without his consent, and shenanigans ensued. At least I remember there's some funny visuals. That's the one where we get to see Darkwing drunk in, like, a photo.
So one thing that I kept thinking about, too, that is not related to anything at all, But in watching this episode, it made me think of a somewhat similar character from another 90s cartoon, which, honestly, I love every single episode of and could talk about for hours, Freakazoid.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole episode that's an E.T. parody where this big dumb alien crash lands in Freakazoid's backyard, and his name is Boron. And he's like, my name is Boron. And he's like completely stupid, and it's just played for laughs, and it's so effective. Where Comet Guy is just kind of like, ugh, enough with this guy. Can he go back into his little helmet and leave already? Anyhow, so I miss Boron is what I'm saying. Freakazoid's like, oh, he told me all about space. And Boron's just like, that's really big. Anyway, Boron, I miss you. Come home. Alright, so we have survived our first brush with Comet Guy. We'll most likely be doing a comic next episode, but I will spin the wheel and see what our next cartoon episode will be.
Yeah.
Alright, I think I took all the ones we've watched already out, so let's see what we get. Disguise the Limit.
Yay! I like that one.
It's a Negaduck one, right?
It's got Wacky Mackerel, the canned mascot. And the tin can! Yeah, the tin can!
Oh!
The greatest hero that St. Canard needs.
Then remember, if you see a little spaceship-looking helmet thing, throw it into the ocean. And also remember that crime doesn't sleep, and neither does stealing pluck.
Ha ha!
Nyah, 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 nyah.